is the biggest dreams start as the quietest whispers. Welcome to Seek the Edge podcast with me, Kelsey Lensman. And I just want to say first, thank you from the bottom of my heart for the comments, the likes, the shares, the little tidbits that you share with me of like, hey, Kels, that really hit home. And like I was sharing on my Instagram story last week as I launched this podcast, I don't create the podcast or our message or any merchandise that we do just for validation, right? And I'm human, like it feels good, but I don't create it just to make my ego feel good, but to truly hear that message hit home, or that it sparked something within you, or that it like, oh man, like yeah, that lit a fire. I cannot tell you how much as a creator that means to me. And it just gives me that air underneath my wings to keep taking a step. Because like I'll share a lot transparently, whenever you're in pursuit of a big goal, whether that be, business and fitness and anything, you will come up to the edge, quote unquote, you will come up to that barrier, the edge, where not that it's easier to give up, but you can question of like, okay, is this really worth it, right? And I think anybody, really experiences that when you have a goal that you're going after. However, just because you question it doesn't mean that goal isn't meant for you, right? And I think throughout my entrepreneurial journey, there's been moments where I'm like, is this even worth it, right? Like am I making an impact in all of that? And just to hear the feedback from that, I just want to say thank you. And I told a lot of our community too that to get this message out, it's not just, me sharing it on my Instagram story or even you guys, it's you living out this message. And I'm big about action. You will see that through and through if this is the first time you're watching this. I'm big about, yes, it can feel good to hear something that lights a fire, but there's a difference between putting that fire to action, right? And so I'm going to challenge you all to spread this message of seeking the edge, of, knowing you're made for more. Yes, please share, but not just by the shares, but by how you're truly living out your life. And actually there's our events coming up in October 26th here in real time in 2024. And there's a few individuals that, I kind of helped out with regards to getting them in one of our events. And, they're just going through a hard time. And I told them the only thing that I really require of you is that you pay it forward, right? That it's not just, me giving you an exciting, pass here, but it's you paying this good gesture forward. And the same thing goes with this message. It's you paying this message forward, not just by my message, but by how you're living. And that's how we build a community. That's how it goes from not just me, but you making such an impact in your life and in others that we actually get to make a change. So that's first and foremost. Secondly, this is just a little disclaimer and planting the seed is there has been a lot of exciting things, exciting, challenging, everything in between that I've been working on behind the scenes since February of this year. So that's about 8 months. And really nobody knows besides my team, besides a few people that I've shared with. And there's a lot that in the best ways that's going to be coming out over the next 2 to 3 weeks. A lot of exciting things for this next year planned, a lot of exciting things that nobody even knows about that is coming. So all that I'm going to say is keep tuning in not only to the podcast, but make sure you're following me on @KelseyLensman Instagram. Not just because I want more followers, but because I want you to see what we're doing and I want you to be a part of it. So be on the lookout there. And in this podcast crew, I'm going to start with a story. And many of you followed my journey, if you've been here for a little bit, about Mission 48, the national campaign that I created last year. Some of you that are new, you're like, what the heck is that? But Mission 48 was a national campaign that I created, this idea that I had about 3 years ago. And I created it, and what it was is I did 48 different fitness competitions. So that could be anything from a Spartan race to a half marathon to a powerlifting meet to a road bike to a mountain bike. We did all different events in 48 states, the inland states, and the kicker here was in 48 days. So we went a state a day. And throughout that national campaign, my goal was to really inspire women and young girls to step out of their comfort zone, to push their limits, and to show themselves what they're truly capable of. And through doing that, that's where self-confidence is built. That's where not the perceived confidence of, oh, they look confident, but if you actually knew them, they're actually not. But the unshakable, the earned, you can feel that type of confidence in somebody. And as we were doing that, we were raising money for a charity here in Columbus, Ohio, but they're nationwide, called Rocks, Ruling Our Experiences. And they do 20-week programs in schools for young girls to talk about things like confidence and leadership and self-defense, everything that I think young girls nowadays need more than ever. And so that's what I did last year. And after I got home from that crazy, crazy campaign, as I told many people, a lot of the ways it did go the way that I expected. It did go the way that I had planned. And also, a lot of the ways that it did go was not how I expected, was not what I was planned. And I was on the call with her name's Alex. She's from a Brand Builders Group, which they help me a lot put different sponsorships together and just pull some of the different things that is out in the media world that I didn't even know existed. And I was on a call with her last year after, and I was telling her the highs, the lows, everything in between, what I learned, and a lot of the lessons that I didn't realize that I learned in it. And as I was on that call, I was, talking with her about it, and, some parts I was really excited about, and yeah, we made such a big impact. And some parts it was like, man, it did not plan out the way that I thought it did, as any big goal, right? And she got really quiet. And as she got really quiet, I could literally see her gears turning in her head. And she goes, Kels, she goes, you should write a book. And I paused. And my first reaction in my brain was, me? Like, write a book? Like, I'm not sure about that. And that was the split second thought in my brain of like, who am I to write a book, right? But then as we talked about it more, and as she was sharing how Mission 48, that message, what you did there wasn't only just in 48 days. And like I told her, I was like, I didn't want the message of that to just die on October 16th, 2023, right? The message is so much bigger. The impact is what I felt wanted to be so much bigger. And so as we talked about it, I was like, actually, like, yeah, like I would like to pursue that. And as I always say, when you have a big goal, you need to get in the room with somebody that's been there. That has been such a big hack for me of, nobody necessarily did Mission 48 before me, but I reached out to people that have done something similar, and I try to gather lessons. I try to gather learnings. And so with the Brand Builders Group, little small side point for them, is they have a track called the Authors Track, right? And she has helped me a lot with just the sponsorships and events and branding and all of that. And so as I got on the author, just learning about writing a book, because I just thought, okay, you write it up, you print it, and you sell it. Like that's the process that I thought, right? And as I got into that author's track and was in the videos and learning, I was like, whoa, I didn't even know what I didn't know. Like I didn't even know that this whole world within the world existed. And as I literally was going through that course, I was like, man, how do I pull all this together? And so I initially thought from writing a book and ideating on it, I thought I'd write about building self-confidence for girls and women, right? That was my whole message. That has been something that I've personally grown in, where I thought self-confidence was just something that somebody was born with, right? Like, oh, Susie over there. I used Susie in the last podcast too. But Susie over there, she's just born with this, unshakable self-confidence. She can own the room. And then me, not that I was a meek and mild child, but I didn't have that kind of it factor that I saw other people have, right? And so through my whole entire journey, I realized that self-confidence is built. It's not just given, and that it can be obtained by anybody. And I've seen it obtained by anybody, but it takes work, it takes effort, and it takes perseverance. So anyway, I've had many stories. I talk with a lot of women about that. A lot of the talks that I do to different companies and schools is about self-confidence and building it, right? And so when I first initially set out to ideate this book, I was like, okay, let's write about self-confidence. That'll piggyback off Mission 48. And then as I started writing an outline for it, and I actually had a decent outline for it, it didn't feel right. Like just something was off a little bit about it. And the best way that I could say, like it just something felt off. And if you get to know me, I'm very, like, yes, I like to make very logical decisions and I like to be very strategic, but I also just am very intuitive. Like I can feel when somebody's off. I can feel when, this decision is the greatest decision right now. And so as I was writing that outline, I was like, man, like just something felt off for it. And I realized I was very passionate about that message, but it wasn't it. And so I'm like, okay, like where do I go now? And I'm also, and this is, not many people know this about me, but I like to go through some like breathwork sessions and meditation and like just digging deeper about myself internally. A lot of people see the outwardly, the go, 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 but they also don't see the inwardly, like breathwork and meditation and just slowing down, that I also really value and do. So as I was in a breathwork session and, just trying to go deep within, it was like a big bag of rocks hit me. I was like, this is it. Like, I know what it is. I know exactly the outline, as I was even like outwardly saying the outline to one of my friends. Like I had all the chapters already written out. And one of the questions I always get, whether this be from Mission 48, whether this be from the business I'm building, whether this be from, my whole fitness journey, is like, how did you do it? Like, how did you create Mission 48? Like there was no pathway. School doesn't teach you how to do a national campaign, right? How did you start writing a book, right? And I'll preface, we still got a long way to go with that. How did you start your business? How did you, improve your fitness and do all the competitions that you've done? Like, how did you do it, Kels? And it's funny because I was like just ideating about it. I was like, I don't know. Like, let me kind of think about it. And as I was answering that question to one of somebody that I was talking to about Mission 48, I realized that the entire framework or the entire process at which I use for Mission 48, that is exactly the same process I've used for starting a business, exactly the same process I used for starting my fitness journey. And you might not see like how all those pieces come together, but it's a big goal. There's a long way to get to that goal. And I've realized the process has been the same throughout. And so as I was realizing that, they also at the same time would share with me a big idea that they have, right? Whether they want to write a book. And one of my girls, she had all these chapters outlined for years in this book that she wanted to write. Or they wanted to start a side hustle, or they wanted to go on a big fitness journey. And I could feel their excitement about this thing, similar to what my excitement was about Mission 48. Like I could feel it, right? They've done the research, they've done all the behind the scenes details. And then a few months go by and I've asked them like, oh, like where are you at in the process? And they're like, oh, like this thing popped up, like I'll get to it someday. And that is one of the biggest lies that that your brain is going to try to convince yourself of, well, I'll get to it someday. Lord knows that someday might never come, okay? So when I was ideating like, oh, this is the process at which I was going, I was like, oh, this is interesting. And when I also talked to a lot of our coaching clients, I ask them a lot of times, yes, we talk about fitness, we talk about nutrition and training, but if you know me, and especially if you're a client of mine, like we dig deeper. I always say that you cannot outgrow you and your self-image, right? That's where a lot of self-sabotage comes down. So we'll dig deeper and I'll ask them like, what do you really want? Like, yes, you want this or whatever superficial, but like, what do you really want in your life? What do you really want, your next step to be? And some of them will share with me a little bit or they'll be hesitant to. And then they'll slowly kind of pull their voice back and they'll say, well, this sounds really crazy, or I don't even think I could ever do it, but ... Then they share with me either an idea or a fitness goal or something that they actually want. But the problem is like, they just don't think that they can get there, right? And so I've had all of these conversations, whether it be with friends, whether it be with family, whether it be with clients of mine, all about these different ideas and comments, right? And so as I realized this, as I was pursuing all these different goals, there's an 8-step framework that has helped me get from this idea that I've had in my brain to it actually coming to fruition and going from idea to reality. And I've realized a lot of ideas stay ideas. A lot of ideas never actually come to reality. And I'm not saying all of mine do, nor should they. However, I think there's a big gap with that from idea to reality and creation with it. And so my goal throughout this book, this is kind of behind the scenes details about the book, is to kind of awaken the dreams in people's hearts and actually give them a framework to not just think one day I'll get to that fitness goal, or one day I'll pursue, that small dream inside about starting this side gig, or one day I'll finally make a big decision to move across country, but to grow a community of people, specifically women, to go after what's actually in their heart. And whether it be a fitness goal, like I said, whether it be a whatever goal that you have, I want these ideas to come to life. And I think if people can have a framework, remember, we've all gone to school before. A lot of times that's why school is not necessarily easy, but you do this, you do that, you go on, right? If I can give people a framework of how to pursue that, man, so many ideas that might have never been a thing, this might be able to help. And I want to pull that out of people. And so in this episode, that is where I'm going to give you a sneak peek of the entire first chapter. And I have, just to give you a side note, I have the entire outline written. I have the chapters. I have what's in each chapter. I have the topic outline. Is it written yet? No. Okay, but I have all the outline. And this first chapter is one that I think is the foundation to everything, not just specifically with the book, but everything with where your goals are at for you. Okay. And this first chapter is called The Nudge. And what the nudge is that little whisper. It's that little idea deep inside your soul. Little. It's not big. It's not this thing in the forefront. It's this little whisper, this little idea deep inside your soul of a possibility of something that you want to pursue. This little whisper of, ooh, like, what if I could get to that fitness goal? This little whisper of, ooh, what if I could start that side gig? This little idea of, ooh, what if I did move to Colorado, right? It's this little whisper, this little nudge, and it shows up in the quiet moments. It doesn't show up when you're scrolling on your phone. It doesn't show up when you're here, there, and everywhere and just distracting yourself with life. It shows up in the quiet moments before you put your head on the pillow. It shows up in the quiet moments when you're taking a shower and you don't have any screens or anything with you. It shows up in the little moments where your mind asks, like, what if? What if I could do that? And the problem is with this little nudge or this whisper is it seems so far out of your reality. This little nudge of like, what if you could get that goal? What if you could do it? Oh, me? No way could I ever do that. No. I can't do that. What are you talking about? But the problem is, like, this little nudge keeps coming up. And this is why oftentimes when that comes up, we swiftly shut that idea down because there's a logical, not even an illogical, there's a logical justification for why we shouldn't pursue it, right? No, I can't pursue that. It would take time away from my family or friends, right? Which I'm still saying, spend time with your family or friends. I'm not saying be obsessive and stare at four walls all day, every day working on it, but that can be a really logical justification. Oh, I don't want to take time from them, right? Or no, now is just not a good time. Let me get through this, which once again, I'm not saying every time and every moment you need to make a spontaneous, crazy decision. However, we need to understand the lies that a lot of times our brain tries to tell us. And I've seen this now just with myself, with so many women, so many people from our community. So, that might take time away from my family or friends. Or, now is just not a good time. Or, you know what, actually, financially, I need to do this instead of this. And please still pay attention to your finances. But all of these little lies, these really logical justifications, it's not illogical, right? You can make sense of 99.99% of them. And if you told anybody that is just kind of in this average population, they would be like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. Yeah, that makes so much sense. However, if you told that 1% of people that truly knows what you actually want or has been through that where they've had to understand the lies that they've told themselves, or they've had to persist through that little voice that kind of like talks them out of it, they won't let you fall for it, right? They will not let you fall for those little logical justifications that just makes you stay comfortable and makes you actually not pursue what you actually want to pursue, okay? I think that's one of my biggest superpowers, not to brag about myself, but I think that's one of my biggest superpowers is I know when somebody's trying to BS themselves, for lack of a better way to say it. Like I can feel it, I can see through it, and I don't let people get away with it. I'm like, no, I know what you know what you actually want. You just got to have the courage to go after it, right? And so like I said, a lot of times those stories that we tell ourselves make a lot of freaking sense. However, no matter how many stories we tell ourselves for how freaking long, that whisper keeps still showing up. For me, it's like, I call it my God whisper, right? It keeps showing up. And sometimes if you're being honest with yourself, it shows up even out of sheer frustration, right? I always say like God will knock on your door until you keep ignoring it and you're like, oh, no, later. And then he's going to pound and then he's going to be like, listen to me, right? And so sometimes that, for me, that's also happened where like, okay, I'm going to push it down. And the knock gets a little bit louder. And that might be from just feeling more frustrated frequently or me just something coming up. And then that knock gets louder where it's like, all right, Kels, are you actually going to listen to me? Right? And for me, that looked like, and I'll share with it a little bit after, that looked like frustration or lack of fulfillment. And there's this quote from Shelley Esser from Just Between Us. It's a magazine, and this just covered it perfectly. Once again, you don't necessarily have to believe in what I believe, but I think we can all agree with like that there's something kind of pulling us to certain things. And so she says, the nudge often comes ever so gently. Something is pricking your spirit. It's God's ways of elbowing you to get your attention. And in my experience, like I said, you don't need to believe in what I believe, but in my experience, that is exactly how it's been. It's quiet, it's gentle initially. Like it comes up with just an exciting idea. Oh, like what could this be like? And then I ignore it. And then, it'll not pop up for a few months, maybe even for a few weeks. And then it'll pop up again. And then it becomes more frequent. And then for me, that just led to something that I just like, I've tried to push down for so long and I can't deny it. Like it just won't go away. Right. And I always say like, he's not going to tear your door down. Sometimes he might just tear that door down and be like, hey, like, look at me, like go this direction. But sometimes he's also just ever so slightly knocking on it. It's just a simple knock to see if you're paying attention. And like I said, that was me for the longest time. And I remember sitting on my couch about 3 years ago. And I was watching this documentary. It was called 50-50-50 from the Iron Cowboy James Lawrence, which he's a great human. I've got to know him pretty well. Like just an overall good person. And he did and completed and created this campaign where he did 50 Ironmans in 50 states. And the kicker here is in 50 days. So you did what I did, put an Ironman on it, and then add 2 states, and that's what he did, which is unfathomable to me. Like, I'm just I ran 14 miles last Saturday, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this was terrible. Now think about doing a whole marathon and a 2.1 mile swim, I think it is, and 100 and some mile bike. Like, that's just unfathomable. Anyway, I was watching this documentary, and as soon as it got done, I had this idea. I had this whisper, more of an idea at that moment, is it popped in my brain of like, oh, Kels, like, what if you could do a campaign like that to inspire girls and women around the country? Like, okay, maybe it might not be an Ironman, like, but what if you could dream like that? What if you could do something crazy like that to lead the mission and message that you want to lead? And like, you could tell my body language and just the excitement feeling in my, like I could tell how excited I got. And we got to be careful with excitement because not every idea that is exciting, we should pursue it in a second, right? There's a thing called shiny object syndrome, right? Where it's like, oh, like, let me do this, and let me do this, which is actually distracting you from just consistently doing the same thing that's actually going to lead you to results. I see this all the time in fitness. Oh, let me try this diet. When really it's just about doing the boring work consistently enough to get the results. Anyway, so I digress. So not every shiny object syndrome means it's actually going to be beneficial for you. So that idea popped up and I thought like, man, that would be so cool. Like that would just be just so epic. And like, I just got so excited about it. And then the first other thought popped up of like, Kels, like, how do you start something like that? Like, there's no way, like, there's no playbook. how do you actually do that? How could you actually pull this off? And so that first idea popped up, and then we're going to talk about this in later episodes, but then all the reasons why I can't or I shouldn't or I'm not able to then flooded the scene. It was like, boom, I got this idea, and then everybody came in. It's like, all right, Kels, like, I don't know about this. So then I quickly ignored it, right? And just like I said, not every shiny object syndrome should you take massive action on in the next 2 hours. However, I quickly ignored it and went back to putting my head down, building my business, working behind the computer. And that idea like kept surfacing at random times throughout the next few months. Like, it wasn't constant. I did not think about it every day. I didn't even think about it every week or honestly every month. But it would pop up a little bit more frequently over the course of the year. Or I listened to a podcast, hence this one, and they'd be sharing about their idea and or their thing that they created. And just a little bit of jealousy almost popped up in me. And I always say too, is we have to own our emotions, right? And so instead of just saying like, oh, like why am I feeling like that? Like get curious. Well, Kels, like why are you feeling a little bit jealous of that? Or why are you, getting a little bit more frustrated than you have been frequently? Like get curious about your emotions versus just try to shut them down or pretend like, they don't exist. And so over that course of that year, like I said, it kept popping up a little bit more, that idea of like, oh, what if, Kels? And then finally I got to a point where honestly, I kept finding myself just kind of feeling frustrated. Like just this unrelenting unfulfillment or frustration. And it did not make sense because honestly, we were helping amazing people. Like, I was so grateful for the community that we had, the women that we had, the team that I had. Like nothing was going wrong, which was so interesting. But I kept feeling this deep internal sense of unfulfillment or dissatisfaction, like almost deep in my soul. And like I said, I couldn't get rid of it no matter what goal I put for myself personally or business goal. Like it just kept coming up no matter if I was trying to distract myself from it. And for me, it felt like, and this might sound deep, but it's true, it just felt like a deep wrestling kind of internally, like just this deep wrestling. And I remember talking to a friend and about this, and honestly, I did not share too much because I was just trying to figure it out. And she goes like, Kels, like, what do you really want? And I did the same thing that so many women do to me. She goes, I said, okay, Les, like, this is crazy. I don't even know if I could do this. But I told her I wanted to flip a Mercedes Sprinter van and I wanted to travel across the country and do these events and speak at schools for young girls and inspire women to really pursue what's inside of them. Instead of just tacking on my computer, which I'm grateful for, but tacking on my computer and, being behind a screen for 12 hours a day, right? I was like, Les, like, I don't even know if I could do that, but like, that's what I would want to do. And once again, I backtracked and like talked myself out of it there. And I laughed out loud after that. I said, yeah, Les, like, that would be amazing, but like, that's never going to happen, right? And so for me, it started with a nudge that was so quiet. It started with this small little whisper inside my soul. And then it got a little bit louder. And then the kind of the frustration set in. And then kind of the other emotions where I'm like, why should I be feeling this way set in? And spoiler alert, not only did I acknowledge it, I created it and completed it. And like I said, yes, it was a success in some ways and it wasn't a success in other ways. However, I went from this whisper, this idea, to this creation and this completion. And I will tell you through that process, this is a whole nother podcast, I have grown so much as a person. I have worked through so much adversity through that. I'm a different human on the other side of that, right? And so spoiler alert, it did happen. Spoiler alert, we did do it and, we're able to really make an impact with it. But I share that to say, for me, it all started with a nudge. Same thing for my fitness journey. For me, it started with this small, quiet whisper deep in my soul. It was a fleeting, crazy idea, right? And it was a reality that seemed so far away from me. Even fitness, the goal that I had was a reality that seemed so far away from me. But I say, and I'll quote myself from the book that I have yet to write, is the biggest dreams start as the quietest whispers. The biggest dreams start as the quietest whispers. And so that whisper for you might be real quiet right now. It might be that idea popping up in your brain as I'm talking through this podcast and as I'm like talking about my journey, and you're like, oh, that's that thing. Oh, that's that thing I thought about 5 years ago. That's that thing I thought about, a year ago. And you automatically probably want to push it down because it's scary to acknowledge that that's the idea. And what I would say to you is give yourself the courage to even just acknowledge it. Give yourself the courage to even just acknowledge it. And that might look like a what if. That might look this would be cool if. What is that for you? What is that small whisper, that small nudge deep inside of your soul that you almost don't want to admit? That might be taking a dance class that you haven't taken since you were 8. Right? I have a client of mine that's taken her dance class, and I'm so proud of her because that's her discomfort, but also she's so excited about it, right? Is that signing up for a lifting meet? No shame, disclaimer on that. Is that signing up for a lifting meet because it looks so cool that other women do it? But then you think, well, that's for them, not me. Is it signing up for that event, right? Is it finally you pursuing a such big freaking fitness goal that scares the living daylights out of you, but that excites you at the same time? Is that a passion project that you would love to do as a side gig, but then you think there's no way? Is it even as small as calling that person up that you're like, oh, they popped in my brain today? Like, is it actually calling them up versus saying like, oh, I'll get to it later? This doesn't have to be an earth-shattering nudge. It can be the smallest little whisper thing of like, hey, call your grandma today, right? Or it can be the smallest little thing of like, hey, give your coworker that compliment that like you probably would never give normally, but I'm going to do it instead of wait, right? And this is what I call all of these are God nudges, right? And you have to discern, not every little idea or nudge is a God nudge, but for those that have felt almost the conviction that I felt and those deep whispers in your soul, like that was a God nudge for me, right? And like I said in the last podcast, there's so many people, those little whispers they ignore for their whole life. Those little nudges, they just shove down. They do the right thing, right? And I'm not saying working a 9 to 5 is bad. Trust me, some days I would rather do that. I'm not saying, going the right path of what quote unquote conventional way is bad by any means. Like I said, sometimes I question my decisions too with pursuing this entrepreneurial path. However, right, so many people just do what they think is right based on other people's opinions or other people's perceptions. Well, let me graduate college. Let me either go to a grad school or jump right into a job. Let me have 2.5 kids. Let me have a white picket fence. Let me then retire. Let me go, either live down in Florida. Like, let me just do that. However, for some people, that might be their dream. Amazing. If that is your dream and you are happy and you are fulfilled, by all means pursue that. And I'm going to be your biggest cheerleader. However, for some people out there, that isn't your dream. And you know that. For some people out there, that isn't what you are meant to do, and you deeply know that. However, because of other people's perceptions or structure of life, you think that that's the only way. And I will say, don't just quit your job tomorrow and say, oh, I listened to a podcast. Oh, let me listen to my nudge. Okay, let me quit my job tomorrow. But I'm going to challenge you to entertain what has been quiet within yourself. Entertain what is that little nudge that you've been ignoring. Okay? So with that challenge, I will pull this back full circle because I talked about at the beginning, we're here not just for a mental massage is what I'm going to call it. Like, oh, this podcast feels good, or, it feels good to think about a nudge, or, like I listened to a podcast today, so let me mark it off my checklist. That is not what I create for. I don't create for just motion. There's a difference between motion and action. Motion is like, I'm moving, but I'm going nowhere. It's like that stationary bike, like I'm moving, but I ain't going anywhere. Versus action, I'm moving and I'm going somewhere, right? That's that moves the needle forward. And so one of the biggest things when I was talking about Mission 48 in creating it was actually outwardly saying, this is what I wanted to do. It scared the living daylights out of me, because the moment you say it, not that you have to do it, but it gives a little bit more weight to that thing that's only been inside of you, right? You're like, oh, okay, if I actually say it outwardly, like that means I actually might have to do it. And that's scary. And I don't know about all that, right? And so I'm going to challenge you. I want you to either comment below this YouTube video, because it'll be on YouTube, or post, this is courageous, post on your Instagram story. Or I'll let you do this if you want to do it, but you're not ready for that yet. You're like, that's a big step. I want you to direct message me on Instagram at Kelsey Lensman. You see my name here. It's not going anywhere. And I want you to tell me what that nudge is within. I want you to tell me, you don't have to start it tomorrow. You don't have to say you're going to do it tomorrow. However, I want you to get the courage to acknowledge it and get the courage to outwardly announce it. Okay? You don't have to do it. You don't have to do a step. You don't have to take an action on it. But this is that first action step for you. Okay? Like I always say, all right, y'all were made for purpose on purpose. And I know that so many people say that, and that's cliche. But that is what I'm going to keep going back to. They're not here at an accident. You are not listening. Even I will say this too. You have not clicked on this podcast. You have not, whether it be popped up randomly or you found it through a friend or maybe you're a client of mine. It's not a coincidence. It's not just a random occurrence. Like it's something that is sparking in your soul. And so, like I said, I'm going to challenge you to message me, comment on the YouTube video, or post it on your Instagram story. Be a part of the 1% that have enough courage to actually pursue. And then, like I always say, bring the 99% with you because they see you actually pursuing it. All right. Love y'all. If there is any specific topics or things that you want me to cover, this is especially also about y'all and what it can do for you guys. So I'm here for you. I love you. Remember, you are loved and that you're made for purpose on purpose. And I'll see y'all next week.